Here's the deal. Sales isn't about pushing harder, talking faster, or flooding inboxes. That's noise, not strategy. Real business development? It's about presence, precision, and knowing exactly how the room feels before you open your mouth. Jake Stahl, author of Own the Room, How to Communicate to Be Seen, Heard, and Respected, has spent over 30 years training teams across 6 countries and 47 states, teaching solopreneurs how to turn conversations into conversion. Known as the mind mechanic, people who have been trained by him say he has the uncanny ability to break down human behavior and rebuild it into real, repeatable influence. This is where communication becomes your unfair advantage. Welcome to Own the Room with Jake Stahl.
So, Jake, I have this friend who's really good at finance, and we've been talking about him starting his own business, going into the world of being a CPA. I think that would be really exciting and great for him. He's taking classes. He's getting ready to move in that direction because he hates his job.
That's sorry to hear that.
Solopreneurs can all relate to that, right? We want to get out of the corporate world.
For sure.
But he's not taking that step. And I'm not really sure why, because all he'll do is complain about his job, but then he won't do anything about it. What's going on, and how do we get him to take that step?
John, this is so common. And I think we all run into this with something or other. Do I switch to another phone plan? Do I switch jobs? Do I move out of my apartment, which I hate, for the new house I love, but I don't want to go through the hassle of moving? This is so common. And the reality is, John, it boils down to one pretty conclusive sentence, in that familiarity feels safer than growth. So our brain goes through some really weird things. The first is, even if we're in a bad choice, our brain has the comfort of predictability. So even a bad situation feels safer than an unknown one.
True.
Because your brain prioritizes certainty over improvement, because uncertainty feels like danger. So the brain just kind of goes into self-preservation mode. So your friend is probably, listen, I hate my job, but God, I got to form an LLC, and I have to get my first clients, and I have to set up my books. That's all unfamiliar terrain that all of us solopreneurs go through, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been there too. And you almost have to trick yourself into doing it. Like,
You do.
I'm only going to do this little bit at a time. And then you do that, and then you realize, okay, you're only like 2% of the way there, but now you're going to do the next little bit. But I think the problem is he's looking at this whole big picture and thinking there's too much to do here.
Yeah.
I don't even think I can take the first step.
Yeah, and part of that may be, and John, this is the really scary piece of this, is that we get what's called identity lock-in. So people cling to choices that match who they've been, even when they contradict who they want to become, because those bad decisions get tied to our identity. So if we step away from a bad decision, we feel like we're stepping away from our identity. Feels contradictory, right? Your brain should go, hey, new decision, great stuff, I'm going to go. But we've made this decision over and over again. So the brain's like, hey, this is a piece of who we are. Complaining is a piece of who we are. And changing that is scary.
There are chronic complainers in the world. Do you know any of those?
Amen.
I don't know where that comes from.
Again, it becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of who you are. And it creeps in. Very few people become a complainer overnight. It's a complain a little bit today, and people say, oh, John, I agree with you. I'm sorry to feel that way. So you get positive reinforcement. And before you know it, it kind of locks into a piece of who you are.
Can you positively reinforce yourself? I mean, I feel like that's what's going on in this scenario, is he's like finding all of the pieces of evidence to confirm that he shouldn't jump. I don't know if he realizes how much he hates his job, though. I feel like that's the thing. It's like he constantly talks about it, constantly complains it. I don't know if he realizes it, though. So I feel like it's almost like he's he's finding the evidence. What is that? The reticular activating system, where you
Right.
always
Yep.
find those things that confirm what
Correct.
you're feeling. And
Yep.
he's like
Confirmation bias.
confirmation bias and blaringly ignoring all of the very obvious evidence that says maybe I should make this jump.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a piece of this too, John, that has cognitive dissonance tied into it. So when you make another choice, what you're saying to your brain is the previous choice you made was wrong. So a lot of times people will avoid making that other choice because they don't want to endure that little piece of humility that comes from learning you were wrong. So people will stick with a bad choice just so they don't have to say, hey, I screwed up. That was really terrible. I shouldn't have decided this. By staying in a bad scenario, you're saying my choice was okay and I was right.
Tell me this is what happens to politicians, because it's like, hey, I did this and actually I was right. They turn out to be wrong, but they're like, no, I was actually right. It's actually these guys or ladies who were wrong because they were the ones who did this even worse thing. I mean, is that
Yes,
what's going on there too?
exactly right. And you'll see this, John, in relationships that go sour. Like I know a person who's in a relationship right now that is not great, but it's easier to stay in it because leaving it would admit that you were wrong to choose that person to begin with,
Ooh, yeah.
right? And that's
Ooh.
really tough. That's really tough. And in a case like that, momentum beats logic. And what I mean by that is once we start down a path, like your friend at his job, once you start down that path, inertia just takes over. And he sits there and he probably says to himself, I've already invested 10 years in this corporation. I might as well just stick with it. I mean, I've got all this time in. Why would I just start over? And so what happens is that becomes the trap door under good judgment, right?
Yeah.
So we get into this self reinforcement of it's easier, it's safer. If I get out of it, I've made a bad decision in the beginning and I punish myself and I've already come this far. Why don't I do it? And then you get this brain muscle memory that says, I've always done this. Let's just keep doing it because it's easy and it's smooth and it's strong. I hate it, but boy, it's easy,
Mm.
right?
Wow. And we can think about that when it comes to any habit in life that's
Yeah,
not getting us anywhere. Health and
right.
wellness related, business related, financial habits. Man, you could talk about almost anything.
Yeah. And, your health and wellness example is a great one, John. We talk about exercise, we talk about going through a drive through, and it's like, man, I know McDonald's sucks and I'm going to regret it later, but God, it's so easy and it's right here and I might as well just do it. I only do it once a week. I mean, it's not terrible, right? And before you know it, we get back into that brain muscle memory again. So it's very difficult to get out of our own way at times.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I can certainly relate to that. And
Me
my
too.
friend who is hopefully going to become a CPA at some point can relate to this too. One thing he said to me that was really interesting when I look back is kind of what you were saying about staying comfortable and the momentum. He said something about I work too hard in this role and made too many relationships to leave now. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, well, but you hate it. So why
Right.
wouldn't you? It seems
Yeah.
like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth there.
Yeah. And this gets into the narratives, John. We start to tell ourselves after a while, eh, it's not that bad. You know what? Other people have it worse than I do.
Mm,
Boy, it'll get better if I just push through this. Next quarter it'll be a lot better. People rewrite their story so they don't have to rewrite their behavior.
mm,
So it gets very difficult because then we get into this self reinforcement. Remember, change isn't hard because it's new, it's hard because it forces us to confront ourselves. And that is the most difficult piece is finally looking at ourselves in the mirror and going, listen, It was a bad choice. And yes, it's going to suck moving on. But on the other side of fear is a great life, right?
Wow. And I love what you just said. We change not our behaviors, but our stories because that's easier,
Yes.
right? And we see
Yes.
this all the time because they're like, well, we know exactly what we need to do to lose weight, for example, diet and exercise, right? Like nobody is really arguing that those two things are important to lose weight. We
Right.
know what we need to do, yet
Yeah.
we struggle to do it so much. And there are always, you know, certain products that come out that say, well, actually, you can do it this way and never, and still eat cookies and cream ice cream while you're doing it. And it's like, we know better, but for
Yeah.
some reason, that's still appealing. And it's
Yeah.
funny how that works because we know knowing what to do. Same thing as a solopreneur, right? We
Yeah.
know that making valuable connections, quality over quantity, all of those things that we intuitively know is the right thing to do as a small business owner, but we don't do them because it's easier to change what might work in our minds versus changing our actual behaviors.
That's 100% right. And I would challenge the listener to monitor your self dialogue and ask yourself how many times you've heard this. Let's say you're working in a corporation and you want to go solo. How many times have you said this to yourself? It'll get easier. I'll just break through this. At least I have a job.
Hmm,
How many times do you hear yourself saying that? And that's that self narrative that's keeping you from confronting your own decisions. But, John, the good news is there's ways to break out of this. And we can talk about some of these ways right now. And maybe you can take this back to your friend who wants to become a CPA.
oh, I'm definitely sending him this episode, no doubt.
Cool.
But I
Okay.
gotta touch on this one thing because you talked about this,
Yeah.
and I wanna push back a little bit
Awesome.
because it was a couple weeks ago we celebrated Thanksgiving,
Yes.
and I think one of the most powerful ways to acknowledge gratitude is to be mindful of some of those things that we do have to be grateful for because it's
Yes.
true that people have it worse. That, well,
Yes.
my friend, he's not worried about where his next paycheck is coming from. So there is that important mindset of staying grateful. How do we then balance that with not becoming complacent because we're grateful? We want to be grateful, but we don't want to be complacent, right?
Right. Well, John, there's a difference between acknowledging the now and having it limit your future. So to sit at the dinner table during Thanksgiving and say, God, I'm very thankful I have a job and that I have my health and that I have a partner and that I make a paycheck and I live here. And granted, things aren't the greatest they could be, but I'm grateful for what I do have. John, that is the best thing you can do is center yourself and be thankful for what you have. But to use that as an excuse to not grow is where it becomes the problem.
Got it.
Make sense?
That actually makes perfect sense. They're kind of two separate things. Always
Correct.
be grateful, but we too often we're disguising, our complacency with gratitude. Like
Yeah.
we're really just saying that I don't want to grow. So, well, let me just find something to be grateful for so I can stay where I am.
Yeah. And we could have a whole episode on gratitude
Yeah.
because that's so healthy and so wonderful. And to be grateful for where you are is truly a skill. But to use that as a reason to stay where you are is a whole different story.
Okay. Love that. That's a great segue just to make that distinction, separate those things. But when it comes to getting out of this mindset, setting that internal thermometer higher, psychologically, what do we do? Because this feels overpowering when we're in the middle of something like this.
It can be. And John, step one is naming the pattern out loud because clarity breaks momentum. When you articulate that pattern, like if I can just sit down and say to myself, or even say it out loud in the mirror, I keep choosing what feels familiar, not what feels right. That starts to weaken that spell. So if you wind up saying to yourself as a solopreneur or somebody who wants to be a solopreneur, At least I have a job. If you can start to catch yourself and go, oh, I'm using that as an excuse.
Hmm.
As soon as you start to name the spell, you start to break it. I have a friend of mine who always says, if you can name it, you can tame it. And
Ooh.
it really is a mnemonic that can stick in your head. So the first thing is to recognize the problem. Pardon me. The second is start to separate your identity from the behavior. And what I mean by that is we often take our behaviors as our identities. So you're not a person who chooses wrong. So if we say, if we're thinking about ourselves that if I acknowledge that I need a new job, I'm saying I did something wrong. If we can start to say you're not a person who chooses wrong, you're a person who made a choice that no longer fits.
Okay.
And this is part of strata, right? The classic reframe, the R in strata reframe is basically just saying you didn't do anything wrong. You just made a choice that doesn't fit for where you are now and where you want to be,
Makes sense.
right?
We tie our identities to things so often, and it's like instead of I failed or did something in this place, it's I am a failure. I
Yes.
don't deserve any better. Those self narratives, it's such a slippery slope once you start down that path.
Yeah. And again, John, thank you for saying the self narrative. That's another thing that if you can start recognizing it, like I do these things wrong all the time. If you can catch yourself and go, oh my God, I just did it again. As
Oh
soon as you
yeah.
can start to name it, you can tame it.
Right. Cool.
So once you start doing that, then you start to replace the unknown with a plan. Because fear of change is often just a fear of ambiguity, right? I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't know the process, and that scares me. So define 3 next steps. So if you're a solopreneur and you want to get new clients, let's say your biz dev has gone off track completely, and you find yourself saying, I'm terrible at this, I hate it, name the pattern out loud, separate the identity from the behavior, like we just talked about, and then make 3 steps. Over the next week, I'm going to do these 3 things to try and get my business development back on track. Because ambiguity may be scary, but strategy isn't. And as soon as you start to tell your brain, anytime you have a doubt, we're going to develop a strategy to overcome that doubt, you start to really change the way you think. And I think we can all agree as solopreneurs that a lot of times something we fear, once we get started on it, it's not as scary anymore because now we're making progress.
Wow. That's the power of momentum.
It is.
It's amazing how there can be good and bad momentum, right? So
Yep.
I think that in my friend's case, his current situation, he's kind of stuck in that.
Right.
And he's built momentum, this bowling ball that's just picking up speed
Yeah.
downhill,
Yep.
this momentum of excuses, I guess you would say, of
Yep.
just inaction. I mean, action can be momentum, but inaction can also be momentum too. I'm
Yeah.
on my 3rd bag of Cheetos. I got lots of momentum.
I love
And
Cheetos.
you know what I mean? But that's momentum.
Yeah.
So it's all about slowing down, breaking that momentum, reversing course. I think that first step has got to be the hardest, right?
Yeah. And maybe a suggestion for your friend is have him fill out the paperwork to start an LLC. Just
Mm,
while you're at your job, just fill out that paperwork. Second is start talking to your friends and tell them, hey, listen, I'm in finance, finishing up my coursework on a CPA. Do you need a CPA? Start to build out a mini clientele and start to get things set. And third of all, start looking into the costs of what kind of income are you going to need to replace and how does that translate into number of clients you need. All this can be done while he's at his job. He can take his time getting them done. But the important thing is he's building micro wins.
mm.
So big change is often overwhelming, but a micro win gives the brain proof that you can do it. And there's no better example of this, John, than losing weight. People say, I want to lose weight. So they go from one day of eating junk food and not exercising to the next day becoming a vegetarian and cranking out 2 hours in the gym. And it's too much.
Yeah,
It's too much.
it's not sustainable.
Right. Where what they should be doing is if they're going to McDonald's 4 times a week, start by cutting it down to 2 times a week. And if you haven't exercised at all, start by taking a walk around the block. Micro wins to get the brain to go, hey, I can do this.
Mm, yeah, I've always heard it as, you're building a reputation with yourself,
Oh my God,
and
that's perfect.
you have an identity with yourself, right? And the important thing if you're trying to lose weight or be healthy is to reframe that mindset of I'm not a healthy person to I am a person who does these things. So that starts with small habits. So maybe those micro wins, the results of those micro wins aren't even as important as the mindsets they ingrain into your thinking patterns.
That's a great observation. I would agree.
So I know this isn't really about helping solopreneurs or individuals get to becoming solopreneurs. That's not really what the show is necessarily about, though this episode we've talked a lot about that. But I think it's important to talk to that person who's just starting out in their solopreneur journey or hesitant to take that step. What do you tell that person? You just gave some great advice to my friend, but what do you tell on a more broad scale that person who's hesitant?
Yeah. So a great way to do it is to leverage accountability with the right people.
Mm,
So we all have those friends that are very, very supportive of us and probably want our success as much as, if not more so, than we do. One great way to do it is to tell them your plans. Let them become your accountability coach, not people who check your homework, but people who see your future and speak to it. Because, like you said, it becomes part of your identity, and identity is contagious. And sometimes, if you can borrow somebody else's identity for a while until it becomes your own, it really provides clarity. And this is kind of the fake it till you make it, right? You're borrowing somebody else's clarity and identity until it becomes your own,
ooh, I love that. Wow.
right?
So as a solopreneur, we can take that. We can borrow. If we look up to Jake and we admire what Jake has done with his business and the success that he's had, we can borrow Jake's identity, copy his habits. Jake, tell me what time you go to bed at night.
11. I go to bed
There we
11
go.
p.m. and I'm back up again at 6:15. So
And I know you work out
feel
first
free
thing
to
in the
borrow
morning.
that.
There you go. You could borrow Jake's identity in those small ways. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of what you're saying is like those habits of success, you have to actually make those part of your lifestyle and own those. Let that become part of your identity. And then slowly you'll shift and actually think of yourself that way. And how you think of yourself is so important.
It is. And John, start to think of yourself without the change. So, in other words, I feel like this today as a solopreneur. My business development isn't going great. Is it worth making the plans now and going through a little bit of pain to create a strategy? And is that more or less painful than sitting here 3 months from now thinking the same damn thing?
Mm,
For
mhm.
3 months now, I've spun my wheels. Well, is it worth taking 3 small steps today to not feel like that 3 months from today? And when you say to yourself, it's not that bad, ask yourself, what would you tell a loved one who would say that to you?
Mm, that's a good question.
Right?
It's
You
a
would say
really
to
good
them,
question.
get off your ass and do it. What are you
Yeah.
waiting for?
If
Right?
you really loved them, you probably would.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And John, you said this may not be what the show's about. The show's about owning the room and becoming respected and communicating in great ways. Well, that's not just external. You need to own your internal room inside your
Ooh,
skull. So you
yeah.
really need to own the external room. And more importantly, to do that, you need to own the internal room, which is right inside your skull.
Ooh, that is such an important point that we don't often think about, and that probably comes first before
Yeah.
you can even own the external. It's kinda like the concept in leadership, you gotta be able to lead yourself before you lead others.
Yeah.
right? And that's the same thing. Own your internal room, and boy, that room can get messy in there
Oh,
sometimes.
that room, my room gets messy a couple of times a day in there.
A
I'm
couple?
constantly cleaning and reorganizing. I haven't reached feng shui yet inside my skull, but I am working on it.
So what's messier, your office or your skull?
Oh, my office is clean as a whistle. My skull is a maelstrom, usually twice a day. I need to go in and do a little bit of cleanup, but
Yeah, and I love what you mentioned about pain too, about that short-term pain. We actually had a phrase that I'll always remember on our, shirts that we wore in the weight room, on our high school football team, and it was a simple phrase that is not scientifically proven, but I think so powerful, and it said, "Pain is weakness leaving the body."
ooh, I like that.
I thought to myself, "Wow, isn't that so true?" Like, the pain is short term, and when
Yeah.
you're through it to the other side, you're just a little bit less weak. That weakness is just oozing out of your body in that sweat that you're pouring into whatever you're doing. So obviously that isn't scientifically proven. I don't think biologists would agree that pain is weakness leaving the body,
No,
but
I'm sure you get a lot of arguments there. We're going to get hate mail from all the biologists across the country.
still, it's a mindset to embrace, and it's not just in the physical workout space. It's also as a solopreneur and some of those things that we all struggle with, right? And
Yeah. And John, in the book that is out now that I wrote, Own the Room: How to Communicate to Be Seen, Heard, and Respected, I talk about a client I had who wanted to start her own business. And she's like, I really want to start my own consulting business. And I said, well, why don't you? And she's like, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be embarrassed.
mm,
And I said to her, so tell me which would be more painful: the pain of being wrong right now, that 5 minutes of discomfort, or sitting in your rocking chair in 15 years, looking back thinking, I could have done that.
yeah,
And
that's a
she said to me,
reframe.
it's definitely the second one. And within a month, she had gotten herself up and running because the pain of not doing it was so catastrophic that it made it easier for her to take the first step.
Wow. And sometimes you just need an external source to reframe,
Yeah,
and that's
most of the
exactly what
time.
you did. Yeah. Yeah.
Reframing yourself is difficult.
Yeah, that's why coaching, therapy, those things are so powerful because of that. And maybe as a solopreneur, you need some coaching or therapy. I mean, that's not a bad or weak step to take at all.
It's funny, I have a degree in psychology from Syracuse. Go Orange.
Go orange.
And one of the things that kind of struck me when I was getting my degree was that psychologists need psychologists.
Hmm.
That even as a psychologist, you need a psychologist to keep your own thoughts sorted out after helping other people sort their thoughts out. And I thought, how weird is that? But then I
Yeah.
come to find out therapists have their own therapists, and coaches have their own coaches, and mentors have their own mentors. And it's like, this all makes sense. We all need that accountability coach and that person to help us reframe. What do they say? The cobbler's shoes are the ones with the holes in them.
That's right. I was
Yeah,
just
we
thinking that.
we
Yeah.
often find it so difficult to do for ourselves what we do for other people.
Yeah. A marketing company that I do some contracting work for, boy, their marketing sucks. I hope they're not listening right now. But their marketing sucks. It's like you'd think you'd do a better job at marketing when you're a marketing company, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking with a friend not long ago, and I was talking to him about an issue I was having. And I had given him a preview copy of my book. And he's like, didn't you cover this in the transfer section of your book? And I'm like, stop it. just just stop it. Yes, I did. But that doesn't mean I'm doing it, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's often hard. One of my favorite sayings is sometimes you're so far in the jar you can't read the label.
Oh, I
And
like
I
that
find
too.
myself very deep in the jar at times.
Yeah, and don't we all? So it's
Of
encouraging
course.
to hear that even, successful entrepreneurs like Jake here, they're struggling with the same things
Oh,
you are.
absolutely.
So the next steps, like you just said, those steps are really powerful. Those micro wins, trying to change that
Yep.
shift in mindset and for my friend who really wants to become a CPA but doesn't realize it yet, get your butt off the couch and let's do this.
And you know what, John? The last piece of that is have him give himself a timeline. Give
Mm,
himself a
yeah.
deadline. So I want to form an LLC by the end of the year. And I want to try and get 3 clients on the side as a side hustle by January 30th. A lot of times when you give yourself a deadline, you definitely decide to take action. But when you say, I'll do it someday, that opposite end of that goal is so wide open. You're like, well, I said someday. It's not someday yet.
Yeah. It keeps it comfortable, right?
It does. Yep.
Yeah.
And
So,
this is why some people who say they want to become successful never get there because they
yeah.
never define success. So it's just our self-talk is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, and fear of failure, don't let that hold you down. I feel like
No.
we're really spewing some good stuff here, Jake, today
Yeah,
because
we
you're
got it. We got it going on today.
yeah, and so those are the next steps. So again, to my friend, I'm going to send this to you so you know who you are. Get your butt in order. I can say that to you because I love you, okay? I can't say that to everybody checking this out, but to you I could say get your butt off the couch and let's go.
Absolutely.
Thanks for checking out Own the Room with Jake Stahl. If you've gotten value from this episode, share it with the solopreneur in your life who wants to know how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. Review and rate the show wherever you check out podcasts, and grab your copy of Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll catch you next week on Own the Room.